To start. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Maximizing Your Geospatial Data with Google Maps Content Partners. My name is Amy, and I'm the Operations Manager here at National State Geographic Information Council. If you're unfamiliar with that organization, NSGIC exists to advance effective national coordination of geospatial information by supporting state-level cooperation. We serve as a national forum for the development of capable and future-oriented geospatial leadership. If you'd like to learn more information about how to get involved with us, please visit our website, www.nishjic.org. Just some reminders for our call today. All attendees have been muted on entrance. There will be time at the end of the presentation for Q&A. Please place your questions into the chat box and they will be answered and be read aloud at the end of the presentation. Additionally, a recorded version of this webinar will be made available afterwards, so please be on the lookout for an email with that information. And just a special note for today, if you're in the U.S., the National Emergency Alert Test is scheduled between 2:20 and 2:40 Eastern on your phone. So please be sure to remain on mute so it does not disturb the presenters. And with that, I will now turn it over to the presenters. Thank you again for joining us. Holly?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us, Amy and NSGIC. I really appreciate it. I didn't mean to stop my video, but you don't get to see my lovely face for some reason, but maybe it will pop on in a minute. Okay, well, thanks for having us to talk about the Google Maps Content Partners Program. We presented this a few years ago as the Geo Data Upload, and hopefully you'll see that we made plenty of improvements since then. We've actually had about 250 new features and improvements on Google Maps in the past few years. And for the Google Maps Content Partners Program, responsible for those updates are two people joining me. I'm going to move over to the next slide. So Dave Ernest is here, our product manager, and Megan Bergman, our program manager for the Google Maps Content Partner, here to join us. Dave will be doing our presentation. I'll pass it over to him in a minute. And then Megan, who is the backbone of our operations, will be around later to answer some questions. So with that,
I'm Holly. I'm so sorry, I do not mean to interrupt. We cannot see your slides. I see Holly Howard started screen sharing, but I do not see the slides anymore. Actually,
sorry, I can see it. So I guess people in the chat, feel free to chime in if you cannot.
People can see.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh. Holly, I think the screen did not change for me, so I think it may be stuck.
All right, let me just do a quick. Sorry.
No worries.
So Emily, I did forward you the slides if you want to maybe present for us.
I was just going to suggest that. I'm happy to share the slide deck. Alrighty.
I'm going to stop presenting there.
Be on the lookout, or the ear out for next slide, please.
Perfect. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's our smiling faces. So, yep, and just lastly, so Megan and I will be around later to answer some questions. And so I'm going to hand it off to Dave Ernest to give you, to kick it off.
Fantastic. Well, hello, everyone. It is great to meet you. I may be a little bit of a less familiar face, just reiterating what Holly said. I'm a product manager here on Google Maps, and I focus specifically on how we can build the best map possible in partnership with folks like you. And so the Google Maps Content Partners Program and all the tooling around it, I focus on those surfaces and everything we can do to make it better. And because of that, I'm so excited to talk to you today about this presentation. If we go to the next slide, I would love to kick this off with just a really simple check among the group of how many updates do you think Google Maps makes every day to its map? Maybe in the chat, if folks want to volunteer some ideas, I can see if anybody gets very close to it. You might want to put something with a high number, I might recommend, with your guesses. All right, I see millions, at least 7. Wonderful. 10 to the 9. Okay, we've got some. Perfect. 2.8 million. Well, let's jump to the next slide and let me answer on this one. So we're making over 50 million updates daily to our map. And this is just an incredibly high number. And to do so, we depend on all sorts of sources from, as I'm sure you've seen our street view cars driving around the world, overhead imagery. And to be honest, also incredibly importantly, our partnerships with folks like you. And as you make your maps and improve your local maps in your areas, that directly impacts the experience of Google users everywhere and helping them navigate the world. So if we jump to the next page, I'm excited to sort of formally, if folks have not heard this, in the past you may have heard Geo Data Upload. We rebranded as Google Maps Content Partners. And the core rationale there was the tool that we want to share with you is about a lot more than just you uploading data, whether it's from moving from an upload model to thinking about how you could share data with us more frequently as in a feed model, or thinking about ways that we can make our partnership richer. We wanted the title and the description of this partnership to represent everything that can be imaginable as we go into the future. And so this program, this set of tooling, represents one of our most important mapping sources for keeping the map up to date with all those changes that we already talked about. And it gives an opportunity for you all to make sure that the hard work that you're doing is having the maximum impact possible. When we're able to keep the map up to date, the folks in your area aren't going to complain about knowing that, I can't get pizza delivered, my house isn't being found, the road was incorrect and I was routed wrong. And so everything you do is really, really helpful. If we jump to the next page, I'll share a little bit more now about who we target. And I like to think about this pretty simply. The main definition is that you are trusted by local users to know what does and doesn't exist. So if a Google Maps user was to look at this content that you generated or look at an edit that we made with your data, and they'd say, oh yeah, it makes sense that X government body knows that this exists. That's the core criteria. The two other things, though, that are relevant for us is first that you have high quality geospatial data. So obviously we trust that you're putting in a lot of effort into making sure that's high quality. And second, that you have the rights to share that data. So we want to avoid situations where you're maybe taking data from one platform and sharing it with us, and you don't necessarily have the rights to do so. The folks that come up most often when we think about this categorization are local, regional, and national governments. And so you can see, or organizations at every level, whether it's transportation, municipalities, a full range. We partner with housing developers in local areas that are often on the cutting edge of building new neighborhoods and roads. Healthcare providers, agencies, and NGOs. So if there's critical services in your city that you want to make sure are available and visible on the map, we partner a lot on that. We also partner with organizations that may depend on our data to deliver value to their users. So you can imagine if somebody's trying to deliver or route packages to somebody's house and they find a problem with that and they can't service that house, they might let us know. And then finally, the long list of other organizations that you can imagine, like universities that want their campus modeled correctly on the map, and other cases like that. Going to the next slide, I want to share a little bit more. If we hit to the next slide here, I'd love to share a little bit about what we focus on. And there is a long, long list. I wanted to start with what's probably most relevant to this audience, and then we can talk about a lot of the other things we do. So for us, we're always looking for help from you all on understanding how addresses, or specifically geocodes with the actual lat long, are changing in the world. So whether new ones have been added, the existing ones removed because they were incorrect, or things have been updated like a readdressing scenario. We also really care about road geometry and attributes, so understanding the new roads out there, whether they are, what the speed limits are on them, whether the route names have changed, the full gamut of everything. We look at administrative boundaries as well. We rely really heavily on our partnerships with authorities like you all and others on understanding where the lines are that define the boundary of a city, a state, other levels, postal codes, that full range. And finally, points of interest. So if there are specific services within your city that you want to show up as points of interest, or anything else that's relevant for your goals, we could partner with you on getting those on the map. This is a small list, and even within these, there are a ton of details. So I'd always recommend checking out our content requirements. If you jump to the next slide, I'm going to give you a preview of all the other things we do. So at the top left, you can see a little bit more on the specifics for these sort of core foundational types that we think this group would be interested in. But we also prioritize a lot of other things. So properties at a more specific level. So understanding parcels, address points, new roads, and new housing developments. We look at building footprints and parcels more, parks and protected areas we support. And then in the mobility and transport space, there's a huge number of new types that we're working on. So transit, we have a very strong and rigorous transit data sharing program. I'm not sure if it overlaps heavily with this group, but if it is, thank you for all your hard work. We're now working on EV charging stations, so helping cities and locations step into the future with renewables and making sure that EV vehicles have a place to charge and can be found on our map easily. Travel restrictions, road closures, and other restrictions, very, very important. And we're always looking to partner more deeply with folks on this. And most recently, we're more actively supporting bicycle routes and would recommend that if you are maintaining bicycle routes in your cities or local areas, to share that data with us. There's been a huge amount of demand, so we can't promise maybe as quickly as we might promise we process your roads and other things, but we will get to it, and sharing it with us really helps us prioritize it. And finally, imagery. We also accept things like overhead imagery, whether that's aerial or satellite imagery, or even street view imagery or drones or indoor imagery. We'll potentially partner with you on. And with each of these, when you share data with us, we'll help set expectations on whether or not we can process it, and anything that you should be expecting to hear back from us on. So this is a long list of data types. There's probably even more, so always please check out our partner content requirements on our website. And if we jump to the next slide now, I can share a little bit more about that. So the one thing I want you all to remember and to share with other folks is, please check out g.co/maps/content partners. This will give you sort of your starting point for how to find out what data to share with Google and how. It gives you an overview of what this specific tooling accepts and where to share. And if it's not within that scope, it'll redirect you to the right resource as well. So it's a great, great starting point. When you do go to this site, you'll have an opportunity to set up an account with us. And this will make sure that we have enough basic information about you to verify that you are a trusted government source or trusted some type of third-party source. And just to get to know you a little bit better so we can partner with you properly. And then once you have access, you'll basically have the ability to upload new data with us, view the status of the previous data shared, and message with us directly about any data that you have shared. And so we'd always recommend, if you have shared data with us and you have questions or concerns about it, you can go right into the tool and ask those questions. Now, if we keep jumping forward, now we have, as I mentioned, we have a long sort of detailed guide about how best to share data with us. The intent behind this is to make sure that we understand what you are trying to capture when you share data. So if you want to make sure we know that this means X, it is very, very helpful for us to have very specific field names as well as detailed data requirements. And what happens when you share with this is it'll accelerate our processing and help us both get to your work and others' works more quickly. And we are looking for feedback today. And so we will be asking in the chat questions about where folks are maybe having trouble. And so please keep these coming. I won't respond to all of these immediately. I'll just get through things, but please keep the questions coming and we'll have a queue of them at the end while working with the chat. Jumping to the next slide so we can get to the more conversational stuff. We do, let's watching this jump. So if you ever have questions just in general about the program and the tooling, we do have a full-fledged FAQ center. Within this, there's a list of different questions about data sharing expectations, how to set up an account, how to share an account with other folks. Maybe you're an organization that has 3 or 4 people. and you'd like all your submissions to be tracked centrally, you can do that, which is really exciting. And then also, if you have a general question here, let's say you haven't signed up for the tool, or you signed up but haven't shared data yet and want to be able to message with us directly, in that FAQ, you'll be able to find a contact us channel, and that will help answer any general questions. Once you have shared data and you want to talk about that data specifically, we always recommend using the messaging system within the tool, because that will be linked directly to that data, and you'll be talking to the person that has the deepest insight on that data. And finally, if we jump to the next slide here, I'm going to hand it off back to Holly to share a bit more about all the other ways that we may be interacting with you and some of the programs you should be aware of.
Thanks so much, Dave. I was just kind of trying to get some of the questions in the chat answered. So I'll just quickly, hey, Jeff from Localese. And there was a question about vertical height restrictions, and I started to answer it, but we are working on the work zone data exchange on that group with the US Department of Transportation. And just all these questions in the chat, Megan's getting to them also, but we will be able to answer these offline as well. So we will take down these chat questions, and we can get to these Q&A later. But okay, so just talk more about collaboration. So obviously we're here to talk about the Google Maps Content Partners Program, and that's what we all know. That's what we work on the most, but we do have other ways to share and to collaborate on maps with us. And so we wanted to highlight some of these partner programs. We call them kind of our sister programs at Google. And so Google Maps, Google Transit Partners is similar to Google Maps Content Partners in that you're also able to submit data to our transit, to get your transit data on Google Maps through this program. And this is, as many of you know, this would be using GTFS. You could also submit the stops, routing, and schedules there. And so certainly look into this, and I added the website there. And then, as you know, I always have people say, oh, well, you know, with Google Maps or Waze, and, you know, but yeah, it's true. We don't actually, we certainly work together, but there is a separate partner hub with Waze for Cities, and you want to check out there as well, because they really have a great cities program, and they have a partner hub there, and so you can check that out. And so, next slide. Google Earth Engine and Environmental Insights Explorer. So I wanted to mention these. These are also sister programs. Hopefully, so people that are joining from NSGIC, maybe you've met Sean Waltman and Kyle Campbell, and they certainly do a lot of presentations on these. And so hopefully you've seen these quite a lot. Just to touch on the Environmental Insights Explorer. So for cities, there's hundreds of cities that participate in this program. And this is using your own geospatial data to look at environmental insights for your city. So once you submit your data, they do analysis that can help you figure out how you can reduce emissions in your city based on the infrastructure in your city. So feel free to look at that website as well. And we'll go to the next slide. Okay, yeah, so we just added these to, feel free to go ahead and take a look. If you want to take a look at the website now, you'll see a lot of the similar images that we used in the slide deck. And yeah, I think we'll go ahead and do some Q&A. We could start with some of the questions in the chat. How's that going, Megan? You got some answers in here. But we could start, maybe we'll start with one question for you. If you go to the next slide, we'll do, let's see, it's 7:25. So maybe we'll do a couple questions for you, and then we can move on to some Q&A. All right, so the next slide, Emily. So this is something for the chat. We'll start with this one. If you could edit Google Maps directly, what type of edits would you make? We're interested to see. So if you just want to go ahead in the chat, we can make it, we'll pretend to make it anonymous if you want to go ahead and put it in there. Just get some ideas for us in here. And as you're putting those in there, just to give you more ideas on how you can give feedback, if you go ahead, if you do submit data through Google Maps Content Partners, we do send out a biannual survey. We have several hundred people that give us, it's kind of an extensive survey, but we really do use that information. Dave and Megan kind of comb through that to kind of figure out what product changes we should make. And so your feedback is really valuable on that survey. So thank you to all who participated in that. We do have another one coming up. So we do appreciate any feedback for that. And anything you do put in the chat here, we are taking notes. So we welcome any information there. Okay, great. Street name changes. Okay, that's good. So that's it. That's interesting. So yeah, we were talking about doing kind of whether or not people would want to do bulk updates versus single feature updates as well, and street name, geometry corrections, lots of addresses. Interesting. Okay, well, so maybe we have a few more questions for you, but why don't we take a minute and maybe if someone wants to raise their hand or go ahead and unmute themselves and answer questions. Dave, Megan, does that sound good to you? Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think building off the chat there, if anyone has any comments they want to make about, maybe you are sharing a big bulk data file because you maintain it yourself, but you're also wanting to edit the map directly. If anyone wants to speak about how they might think about those two different experiences, I'm happy to have someone speak directly or add that to the chat.
So any questions from the group? We can go to another minute. Give one more minute, and then we'll go and go to the next slide, and we can continue to ask you questions because we're getting a lot of good feedback here. Yes,
Hi,
we do pull directly from the NAD.
Hi, this is Jeremy from Vermont, and I was wondering if you
Jeremy.
if there was anything in the pipeline that would allow an authoritative data user to make updates on a more frequent basis, and have it go into effect quicker than the typical, bulk process.
For sure. So we are thinking, we're always working on ways to improve the experience. And, I'll be cautious today to not promise exactly what we're building or exact timelines for it. But top areas of investigation for us are one, to make it easier for you to share data with us repeatedly. So right now it's a very manual process for you to come back and re-upload data. And so the frequency of that is not going to be too high. And we're looking at ways so that you're not going to have to manually come back and tell us every time your data changes and reshare it. And then second, we're always looking to improve the turnaround time and speed of processing when that does arrive. And so I think over time, you'll see those updates happen more quickly. One of our goals in terms of even this question that's up on the screen, though, as a third point, is if you do edit the map directly on our screen, let's say for an urgent case for you that you need updated and you want to make sure exactly that happens correctly, we would generally aim for a faster turnaround time for this direct map editing. Not in a way that's massively different than the bulk files, but bulk files do just take a little bit more hard work to figure out exactly how to do everything right.
And that, can I just do a follow-up on that?
Absolutely.
Just
So
in the, he mentioned, the last question just mentioned the concept of an authoritative source. And I know that means different things to different people, but, if a county, for example, by statute has authority to name roads, then we would expect that we can put road names in and they will not be overwritten by anybody else. Do you have a provision like that?
So we have a lot of efforts around maintaining road and route name consistency, as well as making sure that we don't override an authoritative source. It is not always perfect, especially as you can imagine at a county level, you might have intersections between what you're labeling something as true, as the name versus what one of the municipalities within that county might be, or an area, or what someone colloquially might be calling something. So there is a constant challenge of navigating those different sources for route names. But I think, Megan, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but the preference is typically to trust the authority as much as possible on our end.
I saw in the chat Megan's audio's not working, but hopefully she
So
can.
I guess the question is, do you recognize an authoritative source as being, I mean, how do you identify yourself as an authoritative source and be assured that nobody else can overwrite those particular types of data, like road names? For example, we have authoritative road names, and then we have I forget the term, a memorialized road name. And the memorial road name is not the official name, but we've had all of a sudden the road name just changes to the memorial name just because there's a brown sign out there stating that. And that is not the official name.
Yes, so this is a very interesting problem that you're raising of when the signage itself, which we would also, typically assume to be authoritative, is actually in conflict with what the most authoritative source is. I can't guarantee that we're solving every single one of these cases, but it's a really good thing to flag to us. So first of all, thank you. It's something that we're thinking about and working on. Second, in terms of, you asked, how do I make sure I'm authoritative? That is the crux of the Google Maps Content Partner Program. And so creating that relationship with us means your input is being put into a different bucket. And that allows us to make those decisions where what you're saying we can trust more. And nothing is perfect day one, and we're constantly trying to make it better. But that would be the first step I ask, is partner with us there and share those complaints and concerns there so we can fix them for you.
And what's the first step to become an authority on data?
You got to sign up for g.co/map/content partners. We'll double check that the organization details you give us, your credentials sort of match what you would expect for that area. And once that's done, you'll be able to share data with us directly and make those fixes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I see some questions here. I can start pulling some from the chat. Can you pull data directly from our REST services, or do you rely solely on, my screen is bouncing around for some reason with this. But I think I can publicly say that we are working on moving towards a model where we'll be able to pull your data. So please sort of sign up for our newsletter, register with us, and expect to hear more on that in the coming time frame, in the coming months, on being able to do that. We did have another question, maybe to seed the chat for folks. If there was any way to make your data partnerships with Google Maps better, and I see some of this already filtering into the comments, please feel free to raise your hand and share that with me, or to just put that down in the comments. It's so funny. I can't tell you how important you all are to making our user experience great, and we really, really do value those partnerships. Holly was mentioning the survey we do, and I have direct quotes, and I probably will have direct quotes from this comment meeting thread that will say, hey, people need this to help improve our map, and we'll be making those investments. And again, to the chagrin of many people, we can't always fix everything in one day, but we are working on it. So let's see.
A lot of people
Okay.
are asking about turnaround times, if you want to comment on that, Dave.
Yeah, so we're really proud here.
How we progress.
We've got Megan here representing our operations team, and unfortunately she, I think, is having some sound audio problems. But our goal now is to process all sort of road geocode data sets within 30 days. It's an 80% within 30 days. So yes, if there's specific complications with yours, we may run into some delays. But for the vast majority of folks, you should be seeing edits made within 30 days to our maps. Could you go back a slide right now to where the 2 URLs are? One more. Or actually, I think 2 slides back where the URL was. Great. So folks can see this, and we'll just leave that up. I also saw a comment from Mika, MYKA, about address edits getting approved, but the old number remaining. This is a really great call out. One of the challenges we face, to be transparent, is it can be really hard to determine when we receive thousands or millions of addresses, which ones we already have versus don't have. And, well, for the vast majority of those cases, we'll get it. We don't always identify when one already existed versus didn't exist. And so this is a problem that we're constantly focused on. My ask for you right now is, if there's a particular address that's a problem today, you can reach out to us and say, hey, this is something that is causing some confusion in the community and it's a priority for us. Could you solve this one? And we'll take a look at that. At the broad level, if it's not extremely urgent, but you're just sort of noticing some problems on the side, we are constantly trying to fix this problem. And so it is something we're aware of, but it is not fully resolved just yet. Now I'm seeing some interesting other ideas. So authorities communicating work zones and bridge clearances should publish as feeds with WZDX. Again, we do strongly recommend ongoing commitment and ongoing engagement with the WZDX standard among folks, and would recommend, yes, do this, and reach out to us when you do have that feed and want to share it with us. We are actively looking at these and trying to gather as much of this data as we can. I love the point about a weather overlay to Google Maps. I cannot speak about what's planned for our consumer-facing experiences necessarily, but we love the ideas, and it sounds like this is something you all would care about. And hopefully it's something we can see released at some point, but I can't speak to it directly. If I could edit directly, I'd add updates to houses and addresses. Mine is jumping around. So NG911 is requiring 72 hours update. Thank you for flagging this. This is actually one of the intents behind having direct map editing, where if there is something very, very urgently wrong, we're hoping that can be fixed. Unfortunately, for bulk updates, it's not always possible, just with the number of partnerships we have, to always meet that tight of an SLO. But please know that our investments are always moving us in that direction. And so we recognize, the lower the latency, the faster the turnaround time. We're always working on it. Thank you for the comment about wanting access to imagery for 911 purposes. I will definitely flag this to our internal teams for something for us to think about. So thank you. The timeline for POIs generally is similar. So 80%, we're aiming for 30-day turnaround times there. But it may also depend though on the POI type. The relevance to the individual user will affect how fast we prioritize it. So if it's critical services, expect to see that process pretty quickly. If it's maybe a less pertinent user feature, but something that's nice to have, it might go slower. Jeffrey Benning, could you share more about the water taps process? I'm not quite sure I understand this one.
Jeffrey. See that question?
Sounds good. We can follow up separately if you've got Holly's contact. I have the pull directly from our REST services. And so right now I will say currently we do rely on partners uploading data via our portal, but we are planning and working on being able to pull data directly from your REST services. And so this is very loudly heard, and it's something that's very important to us and we're working on. I see Charlene, does the data from OpenStreetMaps get in quicker? We do not process data from OpenStreetMaps, so it does have to be contributed directly through us. So no, the data does not come through us at all.
So just to add on that one too, so we do have a pretty, you were asking about authoritative before, and so we do have a process that does go through making sure that the data is coming from an authoritative source. So we do check who is giving us the data, and we do go through the data to look at the data, the quality of the data. So like Dave is saying, we won't just take something just because someone submits it, and it does make a difference. And there's several quality checks that we go through for that.
So quick follow-up on the authoritative source once again.
Yeah.
So we have in Minnesota, we're establishing collaborative relationships from cities to counties, counties to the regional government, and counties and regional government to the state to create aggregate data sources or aggregated data sources, so that we have a statewide, or our intent is to have a statewide data set for streets, addresses, parcels, and so on. It's not 100% complete. It relies on counties deciding to contribute, but in general, the data that's there came from counties, which was aggregated from the cities and so on. So is it possible that somebody representing the state could submit those statewide data sets for the benefit of all the participating counties and cities and be the authority?
That's a great question, Randy, and the answer is yes. We actually love to see this level of coordination. And so if you are sharing directly with one of these state or nationwide data sets, we typically are processing these larger ones. And so at that point, your data should be covered by us. If you are not contributing it to one of those, but want to contribute it directly to us, we definitely encourage that as well to make sure we are getting your data on the map. And then I think the one difficulty sometimes with those is that you won't have a direct relationship with us around, hey, I thought this edit was going to go through and it didn't, because those databases might represent 1 million edits. And there will be some percentage that aren't always perfectly done. That's just the challenges of having mapping operations underway. And so if there are more specific cases that you're not seeing movement on, please sort of open that relationship directly with us and say, hey, I have been updating to the state database, which you're supposed to process. I haven't seen it. Or, hey, it looks like this one thing didn't get updated for some reason. And we'll fix that right away for you and make sure it gets resolved.
So you mentioned that there are some national data sets that you're already pulling from? Yes,
for the US, we are pulling the NAD.
The what?
The National Address Database.
Oh, okay. Okay.
For
We have-
geocodes only.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the only national data set that you pull from? I'm not aware of others. I just want to know if there are national data sets that you're pulling from and we can just contribute to and have this done, that would be fine too.
If anybody wants to add national data sets that they know of into the chat for us to pull, that we welcome that as well.
Okay, that's the only one for now though. Okay.
And that kind of collaboration is actually great as well, because like you were saying before, Randy, if, we would say, okay, for your county in Minnesota, you put in those road names, but then if the state comes and they give us a data set, that's a hard check for us to, obviously we would say the state of Minnesota is also an authority. And if they're giving us yours and you guys might have a discrepancy, that's a hard thing to catch, that you have given us one, they're giving us another, and kind of that arbitration. So
yeah, well, it's really
that collaboration is great.
Right. And so we do have that collaboration formalized to a certain degree, and the state wouldn't really be updating any of our road names. They rely on us to provide that. They're simply the data aggregator. So somehow we would need to be able to identify that relationship so that you would understand there really should never be a discrepancy.
For sure. I think this is a great point. And there are some interesting nuances with aggregation. I think geocodes typically aggregate a lot more easily. Roads with the stitching between different people's road networks can result in a little bit of problems. And so I would say we've definitely seen more growth in the geocode aggregation, sort of a quicker movement on that front than the road front.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad Randy asked all those questions because I'm presenting tomorrow at the GIS conference on the open data sharing and how people can partner in on that too. So we're working all the way. I'm a counterpart in Minnesota, but we're working across the entire state to pull all that together and then make sure that there aren't any conflicts or duplicates. So
For
thank you.
sure. If there's anything we can do, I mean, we're very, very supportive of these efforts. And our goal is to help the community always grow in terms of its sophistication of all this open data. The focus is really sort of open data for all helps all. And we think the partnerships and the work that you do is fantastic.
Thank you.
We've got about 15 more minutes, so feel free to add any more questions to the chat or to flag them directly.
We did have one more question, Dave, was we had
Yeah, we can put that.
Why is it important to share data with Google Maps? Why is it important to you or your organization? Something else.
I see this question from Jeffrey.
Go ahead.
How do you want that we prove the location owner can give us a permission to upload their data to Google? Jeffrey, do you represent an organization that's not directly an authority?
So is Jeffrey Benning, Localese? So Localese, Jeffrey, can you jump on? I'm not sure if you can unmute, maybe. So we've been working with Localese and they provide points of interest for us. And they've been providing water fountains for different places, different areas in Europe, which is great for sustainability. We haven't, I think that I can't see the question that you're referring to, but I think.
Yes.
Yes, because I think, okay, yeah. So that's the way that they're doing it is they're working with, Jeffrey, if you can jump on, make sure they know, but they're working with the city and the city has given them permission to add them and send them in. And so I think.
Hello, good evening. Are you hearing me now or not?
Hi, Jeffrey.
There you are. Great, yes.
Yes. Not sure how Zoom exactly works when I work with Google Meet. Yeah, we do different things, not just sustainable topics like water tops, but also we have a lot of contact with holiday parks, amusement parks, also with government. We try to adding speed limits. We try to adding new route networks, new neighborhoods, and yeah, different things. And we just try to understand the program better, the process, the timelines, because some customers of us ask us for some timelines, right? They want to pay our services, but then they want to know, okay, when it is live, and not they don't want it next year. They want it within 1 month, for example. That's the challenge every time. It's hard to say exactly when it will be live. So it will be really helpful to have more idea on timelines per type of data.
Yes, and so we are starting to roll out, more and more granular expectations on timelines. For the most important data types, geocodes, roads, political boundaries, POIs, we'll typically see those within 30 days. POIs is a bit of a complex category because of how many different things can go into this. And so that may be a little bit more variable. And over time, we're sort of hoping The one, I think, challenging situation for you from a commercial perspective is our commitments are sort of best effort commitments that we do our best to hold ourselves to, but don't represent a guarantee to you in any way that you can tell apart this will be done in X amount of time.
We do.
And so I think the most important thing would be communicating to them that, this is the time that we're able to submit it to Google Maps, and these are the expectations that Google Maps gives us. But there's no further sort of granularity or commitment that we can make there.
Yeah, just a big challenge is it's really helpful that governments can share their data, but they think that when they publish it on their own website, that's good enough, and the world will take it over some moment, but that's not the case. And they also don't know how it works really well. And that's why they need an interface like us that can help them to make the data ready to share it with Google or other providers.
For sure. Thanks. Yeah, and I'm sure, just speaking to the challenge of that, it's just speaking to, earlier we talked about how geocodes might be slightly easier to aggregate than roads. It can be very challenging to compare a huge government data set against another data set and determine what difference there are and how to act on them. And so, there are it's not an instantaneous share when they put it on their website. There's a lot left to do for that to become available to the public.
Yeah. And next to government, what I say, we talk a lot with holiday parks, and it is beneficial on both sides, not just in the public Google Maps, but also on the Google Maps platform side. They use also APIs from Google Maps. They want to include these APIs in their own website, and then this is more helpful when the Google Maps is correct. Otherwise, they need to make an own layer above Google Maps, and that's more work. And then they can use also another map provider when the map's not good enough, for example. Dus we try to help this kind of customers on both sides, in the public consumer Google Maps, but also on the Maps API side.
Yes.
For example, that you can go have your journey from your home to a bungalow on the holiday park, the complete journey, and not just the front door of the holiday park reception, but exactly to the bungalow, and that you have how you said it, without reception check-in, right? Digital check-in, straight to the bungalow, for example. That's one of the topics that we discuss a lot with customers.
For sure, and I think sub-premise mapping, or sort of within it sounds like this is a private compound that has roads within it and sort of subunits within it. That is something, we may be able to process. And so on an individual case-by-case basis, you can reach out to us.
Yeah, is there another way to reach out than just to support mail address? Because we receive every time just standard answers. The 4 timelines that are just endless, and then some moment is in use. There's the 4 pillars that you share every time, if your support team share. But sometimes we need to have a conversation around some specific topics, right? It will be helpful to have some
Jeffrey, I can look into this again. I know I've been on a few calls with you where we've worked together. I can look into this again.
That would be helpful for sure. For holiday parks, it's a more commercial way, and then they push us more. Oh, we need a date when it is live, and it's also really helpful for Google that this data is better in holiday parks, because there are a lot of people in holiday parks and also amusement parks. It's beneficial on both sides, right?
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's revisit that.
Okay. Cool.
Sure. Okay.
Awesome. So I do see things like from Mika again. Would it be recommended to upload entire data sets like county roads and addresses periodically, or better to submit small edits daily directly on Google Maps? Our data currently in use was uploaded in 2022. We would recommend resubmitting the entire data set regularly. Right now, it's not the easiest process to do so because it's manual, but please expect that this is going to become easier in the future, and everything will be designed around these incremental updates. I see, do content partner submissions receive a ticket ID tracking number similar to confirm receipt processing adjudication closeout? Yes. So when you submit on the website, there isn't necessarily a number that is exposed to you, but there actually might be in the URL. But just the URL of the data that you shared does represent sort of that ticket. And within it, you will see an active status that says, we've received your data, it's in processing. These are the different types of data that we're processing out of it. These are the number of edits that we've made and when those have finally been made. So we provide a pretty sort of end-to-end status view, and you'll be able to see when it's closed. Within that tool, there's also this messaging functionality where you can say, hey, what's happening with my upload right now, et cetera. And someone will be able to respond to you. The notion of like a specific ticket number or tracking number, just the sheer URL, once you have that, that's enough. And okay, great.
Anyone have any more live questions in the last few minutes? They want to pop in?
In terms of separating old from new stuff, we recommend including the whole data set. If you have a column that says this was updated and this was not updated, that can be helpful to us. But generally, we are asking for, ideally include the whole data set, mark what's brand new just in case to flag it to us. But we prefer the full data set. One fun question I might ask is, Google also receives tons of contributions from people that we don't consider authorities. And as you can imagine, these sort of user-generated content can be very, very high volume. So, thousands of people in your communities might be saying, hey, this does exist, this doesn't exist, this road's wrong, this should be moved here. Is there interest among this community? Would you be interested in seeing those reports or helping determine those reports? And, it would help with your own data as well as our user experience. If anybody has any thoughts on that. These are just ideas that we toss around to think about. I see some yeses. Okay, very cool. Oh, awesome. And we are at 2 minutes left. Thanks for all these responses. Holly, did you want to do a quick closeout here? Certainly from me, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone for listening, as well as the organizers at NSGIC, NSGIC. Oh, I can never pronounce it. But a huge thank you. And most importantly, as always, a big thank you to our content partners, which many of you are. Every time you share data with us, it helps make the experience for the users and citizens in your communities better and more accurate. And we're always looking to deepen that relationship with you. So just a huge, huge thank you. And we look forward to the ongoing partnership ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I'll thank just from Megan too, who I know is not on audio. But yeah, thanks to Amy and Emily for setting this up. And thanks everybody for joining. And I'm sorry that my camera didn't work to say hello.
And just want to say thank you, Holly, Dave, and Megan for giving us this great presentation, and to the audience for awesome interaction. So thank you all again. And we'll give you back a minute of your day. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.